Welcome to Bold Voices, a production of the Community Foundation of Broward, where we explore Broward's biggest issues, get to know some of the people and organizations creating a bold impact in our community, and take a deeper dive into the world of local philanthropy with the experts at the Community Foundation of Broward. And now it's time to be bold.
I want to welcome everyone to Bold Voices, the production of the Community Foundation of Broward.
I'm your host, Ellen Jaffe.
As we are wrapping up the 40th anniversary year, it is amazing for a nonprofit to make it this long, and there are several people who this never would have happened without. I am so delighted to introduce three CEOs who have been here at the Community Foundation of Broward. I'm going to start with number one, Jan Crocker. Good morning, Jan. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Ellen.
And next, we have Linda Carter, a 23-year CEO of the Community Foundation of Broward. Linda, hello.
Hello, and thank you for having us.
And the current CEO, coming up on a 5-year anniversary, Jennifer O'Flannery Anderson. Hi there.
Hi, it's so nice to be with everybody.
Any celebration of the Community Foundation of Broward's 40th anniversary would not be complete without credit to the founders, Libby and Jack Deinhardt. So, Jan, you were first to take over after Libby. Can you give us the backstory on how they decided to create the foundation?
Thank you for asking. Well, they came from Cleveland, Ohio, and Libby had worked as a program officer at the Community Foundation of Cleveland. And they could not believe there wasn't such a foundation in Broward County. So they gathered a group of people together, leaders in the community, to see if this was possible. And thank goodness for Jim Blosser, because he had the vision of how this would impact Broward County forever. It was going to be a tough start, but they were determined. So Libby and Jack did everything as a volunteer. Jack's office, Jack's secretary, Libby's time, and it was just bountiful. It was really fabulous. But there came a time when other foundations looked upon the Broward Community Foundation as maybe a personal foundation, that it had not kind of grown past Libby and Jack's community contacts. So actually, they asked me if I was interested in coming to be the executive director. I really started out as a program officer, and they thought I would be a volunteer as they were. Well, that wasn't kind of what I was looking to do. So anyway, they did hire me part-time to be a program officer. And then I went to a Community Foundation meeting in St. Louis, and I met with the Mott Foundation. And that's a very large foundation, which is very interested in the growth of community foundations. And they, first of all, said to me, there is no money from Mott until there is a paid executive director. So that's how the change really came about. Libby and Jack had to really struggle with this concept that they no longer would be in control, so to speak. So I became the executive director after that. And we then challenged the Mott Foundation, and they gave us $1 million if we could raise the exact amount with funds, permanent funds for administration. So you can see their belief in people who were paid executive directors, because they wanted to see this grow as an institution with permanence. So we met all of that, and that was a struggle because, as you know, many people in Broward were against the whole concept of endowment. Why not just give the money? So we used to say that the United Way was the checking account, and we were the savings account. And I think that that can color the picture pretty easily. I came in, it had been 8 years, and in 2 years, it was the 10th anniversary, and my goal had been to be at 10 million. And indeed, we reached the 10 million for 10 years. That sounds so little now, but it was a struggle, a real struggle, but we made it. So that's how we started.
If we put it into dollars with inflation, I'm sure that 10 million is worth a great deal more in today's dollars, and still a huge accomplishment. There's a quote that Jack made that said, "Libby and I always believed in the importance of bringing people together to tackle issues as one community." And I believe that is exactly what each of you have done under your tenure. And you must have each had some specific goals in mind when you came in as CEO, Jan. As you mentioned, you were able to get to that $10 million mark. Let's go back. Let's set the scene and look at the year each of you took over. Again, Jan, I'm going to start with you. What were some of the major issues at the time and the impact you were looking to make?
Well, I think the major issue was to convince people in Broward County that this was their home, number one, though they might have come from Alaska. And number two, that giving in a permanent way was the most responsible way of philanthropy. And it was a real tough sell. But we did it by just one-on-one meeting with community people all over Broward County, every connection we would make. So I think that was the challenge, at least for us. Now the Community Foundation is known.
Linda, did you find that same challenge when you took over?
Yeah, it was. So I got there in 1997, and it was interesting. I had been at the Museum of Discovery and Science. I had a great job. I had no reason to leave, but I was given this opportunity, and I had a community leader turn to me and say, "Why in the world would you leave the museum? That if the Museum of Discovery and Science fell off the face of the earth, people would be outraged. But if the Community Foundation fell off the face of the earth, nobody would even notice." Well, I was so upset by that comment that I made it a personal goal that I was going to make it a place, the Community Foundation, to reach its potential so that it would, in fact, be a place that if it fell off the face of the earth, that the community would be outraged. And I kind of lived by that every single day. And to your point, I mean, Jan had a really heavy lift, and in that people did not know about the Community Foundation. I lived through the time where we worked so hard to have people be attracted to the Community Foundation. And now, I mean, I really believe that the community would be outraged if the Community Foundation didn't exist because it's doing such great things and Jennifer's taking it to a whole nother level.
I have to give you another quote because Libby might have been prescient. She said, this was back in 1985, she said, "The time will come when a person of means will be embarrassed to die without leaving a gift through a bequest to his community foundation. To do this is to achieve a kind of immortality." So now, Jennifer, you come in and the groundwork has been laid. Now you've got people who are more accustomed to the idea of giving endowments. What are your challenges?
Well, thankfully, I've gotten a lot of wisdom from both of these ladies. And what I love is that they stay informed and engaged with the foundation in their own way. And it gives our board and our staff a big boost of pride and joy to see and hear from them. So I just wanted to add that in. I would say when we look at some of our challenges that we face today, I think still engaging new residents in giving in Broward. And I think because of COVID, there's been another new influx of people who have come, kind of like when Jan was executive director and people were coming to Fort Lauderdale. So we have another round of that. And they're coming here for two reasons, the tax benefits and the quality of life. They realized living in the Northeast, perhaps, and the effects of COVID, it wasn't a lot of fun. And they could have much more of a quality of life here in South Florida and many more tax benefits. But I feel as though those people still have a deep connection to where they came from, and they don't see themselves as this being their home. So they're not thinking about how they can give and support their community or make investments here. They still think of their home. So I think that's still a big factor for us, is engaging folks who don't think of Fort Lauderdale or Broward County as their home to really give in impactful ways. I also think a big challenge for us is diversifying our donor base. So making sure that we're expanding beyond just where our offices are, but engaging all different people who live in Broward. Broward is one of the most diverse counties in Florida, if not the nation. And we want to make sure that our board, our fund holders, our staff, our community partners, that we all look and reflect the diversity of the community. So how do we have messages and approaches that resonate with lots of different people and with the heritage and the cultures of their families and their background. And that's a big challenge, especially for a relatively small organization. So that's, I think, something that we're really trying to work on now. And I would say, finally, making sure that we're staying to be a strong partner with other funders in the community, with other maybe local governments, and especially with other funders. And to make sure that as we're working with other nonprofits, that we're respectful and we're engaging them and that we're listening and learning from them.
Picking up on what you're saying, Jennifer, when you say people were not accustomed to the concept of giving where you live, what would each of you say to someone to encourage them to be a participant in that process? Jan?
Well, I think foremost, they have to realize that home is where they live. And yes, they have a commitment to the past. But one of the things we experienced was not only did we have difficulties with the donors, we had as much difficulty with their advisors at home. So that, I guess, as Jennifer's shaking her hands, we had several potential gifts and the advisors were there the next day to stop it. So there's that to deal with also, that they don't have a sense of guilt. I mean, I don't think the Community Foundation is trying to get all of their money, but certainly they could share it if these are people of serious means. And I think that probably continues to be a challenge.
I agree. It was interesting, Jennifer, when you were talking about people not thinking of this as home, I kind of forgot that when I got there, that was one of my number one challenges. I would remember talking to a trust officer who said, gosh, I just helped somebody give away millions of dollars and it all went up north, even though the person had lived here for 20 years.
Right.
I think what the Community Foundation has done very strategically, though, is oftentimes when you see that happening, where they're just sending the money back home, it's a very passive philanthropy. And I think the Community Foundation of Broward has positioned itself with its programming to let donors know, fund holders know, that they're a resource, they're your partner, and that the individual can say, hey, I care about helping folks get to the next level of their potential. What could that look like? Who should I give to? What we forget, because we were in the field so much, that all of this became natural to us. We knew all the organizations, we knew all the programs, and we forgot that the average citizen didn't know these things. We would be able to vet that. And I think that's what the Community Foundation does so well, is service the fund holders and allows them to speak to their values, what's important to them, and then they can identify programs and organizations that fit those values.
Jennifer, can you address a little bit about the values that the Community Foundation focuses on and how you've been able to get the message out that you do give locally and support other nonprofits locally?
I guess one way we've done that is through the feedback from the last strategic plan process. We got a lot of information from fund holders, from business leaders, government leaders, and nonprofits that they still needed help with the management of the nonprofit. We have a lot of young people. We have a lot of small nonprofits with just a couple staff, and that our nonprofits were struggling. And again, they were kind of under the choking of COVID, that they had been asked to do much more than they thought that they could. So we realized we had to continue to do things to support nonprofit excellence or business operations. And that could be their IT, that could be their finances, that could be their asset development and sustainability, diversifying their revenue, that could be their service delivery models. So we've really ramped up. What's been a big part of our Community Foundation is supporting the nonprofit community really towards business excellence and operations so that they can be much more sustainable, they can scale at a much better or bigger size, and be as efficient as possible with dollars that are given to them. And that's something that is meaningful to our fund holders, and we found a lot to potential fund holders. Another interesting statistic, back to what Linda was saying about people making donations here and the money going out. When we did our philanthropy study a couple years ago, we found that 70% of the dollars that are given out from foundations based in Broward go outside of Broward, 70%. So if we can just focus on who are those foundations, how could we engage them? How could we find out what issues are important to them and connect them locally? We could increase the pool of philanthropic dollars right here just by making some tweaks and adjustments.
You know, when we talk about what issues are important to people, over the course of 40 years, the issues of relevance have obviously changed significantly. If we go back to 1984, when the foundation began, Ronald Reagan was in office. They were dealing with AIDS. Can each of you talk about the changing needs of Broward County and how you were able to make the corresponding shifts necessary to adapt to those needs? Jan?
Actually, you came right into my thoughts in that one of the opportunities I saw was that the Community Foundation could indeed address the need for AIDS, not the medical side, but the education side. Even that was difficult. I had a hard time convincing my board that we should get into any AIDS grants. But I ended up going to an AIDS conference in New York, and they would grant us $1 million for AIDS education. And it was an incredible opportunity. So the board did agree to do it, and we met some flack as we went ahead and did it. But we also received a great many good vibes. We gave $1 million through the community over a couple of years to various organizations that were doing AIDS education. And I was very involved with it and went to many of their programs, and it was just amazing. I have to say I was a skeptic at first, even though I was promoting it, but it indeed made a difference. That is good to hear. And I love not only how you talk about everything as an opportunity rather than a challenge, but how you just go out and I met someone, they gave us $1 million. I'm glad to spend it. And of course, it stays right here in right there. County. Yes. Linda.
So over the course of 23 years, we evolved and changed a number of times. But I think the first opportunity that I got involved with early on in the Community Foundation was really looking at the issues that affect the LGBT community. And so we created actually one of the first LGBT funds in the state of Florida. And we were able to address a number of issues that population was feeling back at the time. There was concern back in the time that if one person went into the hospital, then their partner wouldn't be able to go into the hospital. It was not quite what it is today, where it's a more accepted community. And I love the fact that things have changed. But also, aging out of foster care, I think, was probably the first time we really stepped into that role. And that was a huge lift. We had to educate the community that these 18-year-olds at the time were being asked to leave the foster care system without the recognition. The population goes, well, I was 18, I was on my own. But they forgot that at 18, if you'd been in the foster care system all that time, you probably didn't have a driver's license. You probably didn't graduate from high school because you'd been moved around to probably a dozen different foster care families through your course of your life. And so you didn't really get a good education and you had no support system whatsoever. And again, I attribute that to Gail Butler, who was a board member at the time, who brought it to our attention. And we began exploring. The other thing we recognized at that time is the Community Foundation can't do anything by itself. We were just not big enough, and the issue is so huge. It took years. We worked on this project. That was the first time we actually worked collaboratively with the Children's Services Council. Cindy Ehrenberg-Seltzer was amazing. The United Way at the time, we brought in private foundations, the Jim and Jan Moran Foundation. It was a time where we all worked together. Junior League came on board. We had never done anything with them before. And so aging out of foster care was probably the first time that people really noticed that it takes more than money to move the needle on these big issues. It takes staff time, it takes research, it takes a heck of a lot of meetings, that the work is not easy. but it's so rewarding when you do see the difference it makes. And I think our community has a beautiful wraparound approach to the issue today because of that work.
Congratulations on that. Jennifer, you came in during COVID. Do we need to identify an issue for you?
Well, I think for us, coming out of COVID, it was to shore up the nonprofits, to get funds out to them as quickly as possible with as little restrictions as possible so they could continue their work, they could continue staff, they could keep operating and make the adaptations they needed. So I think that was the first thing. And then after that, we tried to do some recognition programs for all of the staff who had served during that time. So how do we recognize those unsung heroes? So we did that. And then we tried to do a grant cycle to inspire reemployment of individuals who had lost their jobs. And so we worked with Broward College to implement a program to help folks not only just get back to work, but get back to work in better jobs and more stability, maybe with more education. So I think we tried to make the most of that time to help the organizations come out stronger and help individuals as well. And other things I think that we've been taking on, we continue the tradition of supporting the arts. That's a big part of our community foundation. It's a big part of our community. And I think that will continue for a long time. So we're really proud of the art programs that get supported. We have networking events now for our meetings for the nonprofits to share their challenges, to share what they're working on, to partner together. So I think that continues to be a big and growing area. And really under Linda's leadership, the Community Foundation got focused on education. How can we be a partner with the school district and address critical needs there? So under Linda's leadership, we looked at middle school. Why were kids struggling in middle school? Is that a good area we could zero in to help make a change so those kids get on the right track? And we're embarking now on looking at a new area with the school district on gender achievement gap. Why are boys and girls learning at different rates? Why might they be graduating, but they're still not excelling in basic academic areas? And where does this start? And how can we help, along with Helios Foundation and some other organizations that are really key on gender achievement gap? So I would say that's something that's coming down the pipe.
I keep hearing a lot of women's names as you talk about other people who were involved. Is it coincidence that all the leaders of the Community Foundation, starting with Libby as the founder, have been women? Is there something unique or something you each have in common that women bring to nonprofit leadership?
It's funny you say, I don't know that it's a guy-gal situation, but there is a common theme. Looking at each other, there's a common theme between the three of us, and I would say Libby as well, in that none of us saw our role as a placeholder. None of us came to the position and said, oh, Jan did a good job, and so I just need to do that. Or Jennifer didn't come in and say, Linda did a good job, I just need to do that. Each of us saw our responsibility to take it to the next level. And so I think the three of us have a history of leadership even before we came to the Community Foundation, whether that was in our professional jobs or our extracurricular work. If you look back, we just kind of gravitated to leadership roles. And the three of us actually have enough professional ego. I think it's important as a CEO to have enough professional ego that you want to achieve, but not too much professional ego because you recognize you can't do it alone. That you surround yourself with talented people. The Community Foundation has always had talented staff, an amazing board, and that you know you have to do it together. And I think the three of us, as well as Libby, all share those characteristics.
But I think, Linda, it's interesting that we being women, the majority of the boards have all been men, if you take just the numbers. And I think that reflects that's who's corporate leaders, and that's who we tend to go to. But I think both roles can be reversed. But I think women develop relationships better than men, many relationships. And I think as the head of the Community Foundation, that has to be a prime reason to be doing the job, because if you're not developing relationships in many ways throughout the community, it just won't work.
And I think that point about the relationships is perfect because the word that came to my mind was trust. People have to trust us. They have to trust the organization. They have to trust the board. They have to trust the staff. And they can only have that trust if we know them and they know us. And that comes through the very personal conversations we have about people's legacies, about their family wishes, and how they'd like to be known and remembered. So I think it's that trusting this organization to carry out their legacy or be a part of their legacy comes only by really having those strong relationships.
I agree with you. But when you're very young, as we were, it's hard to tell people you must trust us.
Right.
We didn't have a history of it. So there was a lot of personal relationships that just had to be developed.
Well, yeah, we have to earn the trust.
That's right. Earn the trust.
Our actions speak for us. Yeah.
Yep.
They do. And after 40 years, what you have each contributed to the Community Foundation of Broward has spoken tremendously in terms of the number of people impacted individually, the number of nonprofits impacted by what you've done, the number of donors, the number of community builders who are people giving in large amounts, and the understanding of the concept of giving in perpetuity. Now, there has been a strategic plan with the mantra, be bold in your giving. And moving forward, the new guiding message of the foundation is lead with love. What does that mean to each of you?
Well, the word philanthropy means love of humanity. So we wanted to capture that. And we want to inspire people to care about one another, to care about their neighbors, where they live, to consider this place a really important part of their life and their family. And we are going to try to lead with love as an organization, and we want to inspire others to think about that in our own communities. If we all demonstrate a little bit more love for one another, that could really be impactful in so many ways, hopefully including philanthropy.
Linda, Jan, comments?
I'll just ditto Jennifer.
Yeah, I think you coined it well. And that's really what the essence of the Community Foundation is all about.
Are there any messages you'd like to get across to our listeners?
I would just say that it is the most wonderful nonprofit that there is. And I couldn't be more proud to have been a part of it.
It truly was a privilege. It helped shape me as a human being, and I had opportunities to meet folks I would have never had the opportunity that now have become lifelong friends, and I've learned from them. And I think the Community Foundation is clearly the best organization in Broward County.
I don't know how to top that, Ellen. I would say I think the best is still yet to come with the Community Foundation. We're just beginning in many ways. We stand on the shoulders of giants. We really have benefited from 40 years of incredible leadership, starting from volunteers to our professional team today. And we have always had an exceptional board that really keeps us focused on a North Star. And I think that tradition starting early is really ingrained in the organization. And I'm proud to be able to help continue that. And, I feel like I'm a better person because of this job. And I'd like to hope our community is better because of the Community Foundation and the little teeny role we've all played in that. It's a special place and we have a very special mission. And each day we get to wake up trying to figure out how we can help and make something a little bit better. So it's quite an inspiring role and a really wonderful organization. And I hope everyone in the community gets to learn about the Community Foundation at some point, because I think they'll be touched by it and maybe they'll be a little bit better too.
Well, that is what we're looking to do with this podcast, Bold Voices. And each of you has been a bold voice in our community. I can't thank you enough.
Jan Crocker, former CEO of the Community Foundation of Broward. Linda Carter, former CEO of the Community Foundation of Broward. And Jennifer O'Flannery Anderson, current CEO of the Community Foundation of Broward. You have made such an incredible impact on our community. Everybody thanks you for your time, for your heart, for your passion. And we look forward to seeing what is ahead for the Community Foundation of Broward.
So we are wrapping up the 40th anniversary year of the Community Foundation of Broward. And on Bold Voices, we always wrap up each podcast with Kirk's Corner. Kirk Engelhardt, Vice President of Marketing for the Community Foundation of Broward. I'm almost speechless from being in a room. I feel like I've just had 3 TED Talks with brilliant women in leadership. What an amazing group of CEOs that the Community Foundation has brought in, and what a legacy.
Well, how lucky are we, the people who work at the foundation, but how lucky is this community that we had Jan, Linda, and now we have Jennifer at the helm of the Community Foundation. And this podcast, this episode, I can't think of a better way. It's the icing on the cake of our 40th anniversary year at the foundation to have these 3 amazing women just have a conversation with each other and share some of their stories and some of their insight from the 40 years of history that they have with the Community Foundation. And there's that love of community, the passion for creating real change, the commitment to building endowment, and how hard that really is, but how important it is for the future of our community. And their drive. They all have the drive to take our organization to the next level, but not just because they want it to be a great organization, but they know that the better the organization is, the greater the impact that the organization will be able to have on the community. And I don't think this could have been a better conversation. And, when I think back on the 40 years and how the organization has earned people's trust and driven real change, I can't help but think about what Jennifer said, that the best is yet to come. The future is exciting for the organization. And it's because we have such an amazing past and we stand on the shoulders of giants. And I'm looking forward to what comes next.
Amen to that. cfbroward.org is where you can not only learn more about the Community Foundation of Broward, but you can look back at the 40-year history. There's this whole section right on the homepage, and you'll see a greater expansion of what we were able to touch on. Really, it was kind of the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to be proud of and to congratulate Jan, Linda, and Jennifer for achieving in Broward County and with the Community Foundation of Broward. Kirk Engelhardt, always a delight to speak to you. And thank you for bringing these marvelous leaders to me.
We invite you to check back regularly for new episodes of Bold Voices. Better yet, when you go to cfbroward.org, sign up to receive the regular newsletter, and that will inform you when there will be a new edition of Bold Voices. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to Bold Voices. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and hope you'll be inspired to join us in creating a better Broward for all. If you'd like more information, visit us online at cfbroward.org, and remember to always be bold.